We begin with this, former President Trump making his first speech yesterday since being hit with that federal indictment.
He did not hold back during his speech in Georgia, calling the charges baseless. He even compared President Biden's tactics to something that would be done by Stalin.
Donald Trump also hit at the timing of the indictment. Listen to this.
Every time I fly over a blue state, I get a subpoena. It's no coincidence they indicted me the very same day that it was revealed that the FBI hid explosive evidence that Joe Biden took a $5 million illegal bribe from Ukraine. Next, Hunter will probably be charged with some very minor offense so that the FBI and DOJ can pretend that they're fair. They want to pretend they're fair. We got Hunter for jaywalking. As far as the joke of an indictment, it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing for this country. I mean, the only good thing about it is it's driven my poll numbers way up. Can you believe this?
Well, the president, or the former President Trump, is right about one thing. They want us to talk about the indictment and not the real story of the week, which, of course, is the jaw-dropping Biden-Ukraine bribery claims of like $10 million. So let's break this all down so we can understand what really happened.
So Burisma, energy company in Ukraine, the report, it's a 1023 confidential source. Joe and Hunter Biden each paid $5 million. Now, how it was paid, who it was paid to, but the intended target based on this report was Joe and Hunter.
They had shell companies that they were able to kind of process it through.
This information comes from, quote, a highly credible source, as revealed in an FBI 1023 form, which was just reviewed by the House committee overseeing this investigation.
And Rachel, it was Hunter Biden who was the key to this because he was the one given the seat on the board for $80,000. $80,000 a month's a good gig when you have no experience at all. So he was the initial hook.
Yeah, a lot of crack addicts would love to have that kind of salary and sit on a board like that. Doesn't speak the language, knows nothing about energy, but his daddy is his portfolio. His dad, as the vice president, his portfolio was Ukraine. So there was a really good reason why Burisma wanted Hunter on the board, because this company had problems.
And we're going to get to that in a moment. Well, the confidential source, I mean, said what presumably had to have happened. There were many, many different bank accounts that were used. The key would be getting to those bank accounts if you want to really draw that line.
And as many have pointed out, the existence of being paid through so many different bank accounts in and of itself raises suspicion. Why the need to funnel it through so many different landing spots?
And why would they have so many companies? The Bidens have no products they sell, no services they sell. So why all the fact that they had these shell companies in and of itself was pretty.
So let's go through the timeline of how this all came about. In 2014, Hunter, as Pete mentioned, gets a seat on the board of Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company making $83,000 a month with not virtually, but literally no qualification.
Which he acknowledged in an interview.
Yes,
what was your qualification? My last name is Biden, right? Which brings you to that very same year. And Joe Biden, vice president of the United States, was tapped by Obama to be the administration's chief Ukraine envoy. So you got the business interests and you have the political oversight of that interest.
That's right. And the energy company was kind of corrupt, Burisma, and there was a prosecutor in Ukraine, Victor Shokin, who was looking into this company.
That's exactly right. Victor Shokin then begins to look into why Burisma gets all these great oil and gas lease deals across Ukraine. Why is Burisma always the one winning all of these bids? And to that investigation, looking under the cover, starting to look at Burisma, again, the company where Hunter Biden sits on the board, all of a sudden, his investigation is interrupted. That's
exactly right. Joe Biden lands there, famously brags about it later on, lands there as vice president and says, you have 6 hours or whatever it is if you want $1 billion of U.S. taxpayer money. So effectively, they're using our tax dollars as leverage.
Yes.
You better fire this prosecutor, which they ended up doing, which effectively buried the investigation into Burisma, which could have exposed Hunter and Joe's involvement there.
That's right. President Trump catching wind about this situation, which wasn't really hard to do. As you said, Pete, he bragged about it, Joe Biden, during some sort of press conference that he had. And so Donald Trump has a phone call with President Zelensky saying, can you help us look into this corruption? And that, of course, as you know, sparks the first impeachment.
How much have we looked back at the fact that a vice president flies to a foreign country and just demands that a prosecutor be fired?
Sounds like imperialism.
contingent.
Sounds like imperialism to me.
Well, yeah, and then the guy who actually says maybe they were onto something, you should look into it, is the one that's impeached for it.
Yes.
That's the amazing part.
So again,
It's unbelievable.
Donald Trump's indictment comes at the same time we get a highly credible source giving us more information on this potential corruption. Saul Weisenberg pointed out the timing, it's not a coincidence. Watch.
I think that the Trump indictment was timed the way it was to affect the 2024 election. The administration wants to do everything possible, and there are many allies in the mainstream media to deflect away from this investigation, which I think has been very effective. And I think the information developed about the payments to the Bidens through all of the LLCs has been very damaging. But I think there were broader goals in mind with respect to the Trump indictment. And the real story there, the DOJ indictment, is all of the people on the Democratic side over the years who've had similar issues and have not been charged. And I think the allegation of a two-tiered system of justice is a very valid one.
Yeah.
I mean, I need a
Biden?
shell company. Well, I don't have a shell. If you're not doing anything wrong, you don't need shell companies.
Exactly.
For the most part, there are legitimate reasons for it. I get it. But shell company upon shell company upon shell company upon shell company to grandchildren?
Right.
You're trying to hide something.
Of course, you're laundering that money. By the way, Saul Weisenberg says this was an effort to deflect from this story, the indictment was, and he says it's pretty effective. It's not effective unless the media takes the bite and doesn't talk about the real story of the week, which is the fact that we now have more and more, evidence that this president was taking bribes from the Ukrainians.